Hey everybody, it's Joy Brooks at Email and Coffee, and today we're going to be talking about interviews. Now I know that's not like email, but everybody in email marketing, matter of fact, everybody on the planet has been interviewed, been the interviewer, been the interviewee, or networked and met people. And today we're going to be talking with Luann, who is a professional expert on the topic. And she's got just tons of stuff to talk about. I'm very excited to have a moment with her. Luann, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Joy. It's just a real pleasure to be here with you. And it's one of my favorite topics. So thank you. A little bit about myself is that I came into my work, which is my meaningful work, a little bit by accident. I started off in healthcare, got a package, and then that was a huge change for me. So I moved into career transition in a nutshell, worked in many areas of it. And in that process, one of the things that really led me to understanding transformation and career transition was my own transition, because I was always a really high achiever, which meant it wasn't always such a good fit for me in my first jobs. As a matter of fact, it wasn't a good fit, not just such a good fit, it wasn't a good fit.
It was a terrible
fit. So it's kind of like hearing that message several times, which finally it just like drove me crazy. And I changed my career from healthcare and I went into career development, learned how to understand what is our unique gift. So that high achiever that I didn't really know how to use, it kind of was my shadow before, was actually a huge gift. And in a nutshell, that's what I've really been able to help people do, which makes such a big difference in really all parts of the search. But really, it's about putting meaning into your whole life, understanding how you use your gift, so that when it's kind of been not working so great, you can kind of turn it around into what does work great. We're all parts of career. So outplacement, many different industries, all different levels, people changing their careers, starting their careers, moving out of their careers.
coming back to a career.
Yes, changing their career into their business, changing their career into their hobby, just balancing their career with their whole life. And also when life gets in the way, how to work with the life part, because I actually work with transformation, the subconscious mind. So together, the subconscious mind brings a huge advantage to the career, to your whole life, and to interviewing. And that's what I'm really excited to talk about. So thanks for having me here today.
Oh, sure. Most of the people that listen who are in email marketing didn't go to college of email marketing. So they've all transitioned into email marketing in strange and different ways. And some of the people enjoy it. Some of the people just want to continue doing it. Some people move up and out, and some people start agencies on their own. So I think you have a lot to share with the mindset of the email marketer, but also the digital marketer and anybody that has subscribed to Email and Coffee in the past. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics, because I have most incredible body language. And I find myself making all sorts of expressions. I hear my grandmother saying, don't make that face, it's gonna freeze like that. So the do's and don'ts about body language in an interview or when you're meeting somebody, we're not necessarily aware that we could be a little bit more in control of how we appear. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I love to. And I want to go back to the very core of body language, which leads me into the subconscious mind. Because it's a huge factor in us understanding someone else's body language, but also being able to have a better sense of how our own body language is. Because let's face it, when our body language is, it's like a microphone out into the world. And sometimes we didn't really know we were speaking all of those words in that microphone. We were just kind of thinking them, because as statistics show, but actually body language is 70% of communication, and our words are, and the tone and that type of thing are the other 30%. So, Joy, I actually made a couple of slides and I thought I might share them with you because they have a couple of sort of interesting statistics in them. And is that work for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Okay, so these are kind of talking points, not really intended to be totally a guide, just talking points. So can you see this?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So I called our talk today "Smart Moves to Meaningful Work" because I'm just sort of doing some organizing here. As you can see.
That's okay. Go ahead.
We're always living in the moment, right? That's what I call it. Making the best of success in every moment. So as we were talking about smart moves to meaningful work and using the subconscious mind is really important. And I just want to share a little bit about that, because when a person understands that, it makes so much sense about body language. It's how we make our work smarter, not harder. And because the subconscious mind actually makes its first impression in the first split second. It's before we even know we've made it. Our reflection afterwards is the reflection on the first impression. It's not really our first impression. So because the subconscious mind picks up tones of the expression on your face, but it picks up your smile and your eyes instantly, like literally instantly. So it's important to actually know that. I'm going to get into the importance of the smile in the eyes in a minute. That also means that all of our thoughts become self-fulfilling prophecies. So this is more than positive thinking. It's actually chemistry. Our thoughts actually trigger different kinds of chemistry. And this is how we learn how to use it to make that winning first impression. It's totally possible when you know this to literally make a consistent winning first impression, as consistent as chemistry. And this is what I call, ultimately, while we talk about body language and I want to talk about words that matter and things like that, really what we're actually talking about is using the subconscious mind to be able to turn those things that sometimes get in our way into stepping stones. Right. So, when somebody gives you that funny look, like they look at you like, I call it, they look at me like if they just saw me having four heads. That is an obstacle, but that's just a thought that they had. We can actually turn that around by knowing ourselves how to work with that. So that's why I say mindset is a key. It's such a key factor. I just want to share a little bit about the subconscious mind so you know how powerful it is. Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So the reason this is so powerful is, like I said, that first impression is like a nanosecond. That's because the subconscious mind works at 4 billion bits of information a second, which is 90% of our mind. The conscious mind that makes the decisions like, oh, I like that, or I should do this first or something else, that's 10% and 2,000 bits of information a second. So you can see why it's just that first instant smile, how powerful that is. And that first instant eye contact, super powerful. But it also means that we have to get to the root of what we're thinking so that we're not sending, I call them invisible darts out there. They're invisible to us, but they're felt by others.
Right.
So what that means is then when you smile, so this is actually chemistry. When a person smiles, it actually triggers endorphins and those good feeling chemistry. When you frown, it actually triggers cortisol, which actually the instant you frown or you even have that frowning tone of voice, the other person picks it up and they go into cortisol. Now, what cortisol does is it actually shuts down. actually shuts down what we're thinking. So what happens is in that instant, you disconnected rapport.
Right, that's almost flight or fight mode.
Yeah, it's similar to that, but it's so slight. And because we're used to it in our everyday, we sometimes, when you have a conversation, you can't really feel like, why didn't it really go that well?
Right,
This is exactly why.
right.
Exactly why. It's kind of those invisible things. But we can actually turn that around. So let's say when we go back to that, that look, when somebody's giving you that look of, do you have four heads? Or that's what it sounds like, or it feels like. We can actually go into curiosity, because if we go into, oh, I'm not sure, I'm not sure, how did you understand that? If you ask a question,
Mhm.
what it does is it switches the cortisol into endorphins of thinking.
Right.
So they're no longer like fighting each other. They're
Right.
thinking, oh, what was I thinking? So this is a really handy thing to know in interviews, because I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's possible to have human interactions that always flow perfectly, because they don't. But this is a way of using that,
Mhm.
to be able to kind of understand, oh, there's some things that we can do. So that first impression is really important. And it's eye contact, smile, and it's the micro movements, it's the micro expression. So another thing about body language is when we're uncomfortable, we tend to kind of go back.
Mhm.
And we kind of look like, oh, question.
Mhm. Right, right.
So instead, what we want to do is lean in,
Yeah.
because as soon as we go back, the other person's cortisol starts flying, and it goes, oh, they don't like this. Oh, something's wrong. Red
Mm.
instead of green. So posture is really important. So that's the leaning in posture. And I showed this little diagram here on this slide. It is a little simpler than this, of the wires attached to our heads. But it's kind of like that. You can see here, I wanted to mention this green brain. This is when we're smiling. This is when we're asking questions. This is when we're curious. These are all the things: smiling, leaning forward, curious, asking, also eye contact, like really thinking, what's the other person thinking?
Mhm.
Considering others. All of those are green. Anything that goes, oh dear, or nope, is red. And this is what it literally shuts down the green, just so you know.
Mhm.
You can also think of, oh, I want, to smile or ask a question. It'll change things totally. So that's a little bit about body language. I want to share this. So it's like being alert is really important. So one of the things about the job search is it's changed so much. So this isn't just the job search. This is like, I use the word term job search a little loosely. I use it like when people are kind of navigating their career path, which means people that are looking at contract work, business work is similar to a job search, because you're always reconnecting and looking for more connections and more opportunity to contribute your cause. So the whole thing has changed completely. And one of the things that employers really look for, which I think is true for customers too and businesses, is we look for engagement. We look for what's the level of enthusiasm, and that's really important. We also look for people who are kind of forward thinking and solution thinking. So solution thinking is a key point. More than ever, people are listening for solutions.
Mhm.
So that kind of language actually
Right.
really works. And that's the part about moving forward. So, when you're having a conversation, it's really kind of exciting and you want to move forward and you want to hear more. That's one way of turning into that sort of body language that helps build that rapport and builds that feel good feeling. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It all makes sense. Obviously, you want to use the right words, and it's sometimes when you're speaking and you're beginning to they're asking you questions about points in your life that may have not been the best. They want to hear, tell us a little bit about, a situation where you failed and you could have done better. So they're pointing towards a negative, and you've got to turn that around. You've got to put in all that positive language. You can't present it as a negative where you didn't solve a problem, and you should be aware of that conversation or that scenario before you go into the interview, that they're going to ask you that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So this is a really good question, because the way that question sounds is most likely a little bit different than what the interviewer is looking for. So the reason that interviewers ask that question is, tell me about a time that you failed, is because what they really want to know is they want to know, how do you deal with it when something has failed? So it sounds a little bit kind of incriminating, but really it's actually a real gem. Because when an interviewer knows how you handle things that are difficult, that is one of the points, the questions that gives you the highest points in their confidence level when you answer it. So good point. So there's a formula actually for this. Any of these difficult questions, all they're looking for is first of all, your awareness of what was a time when you failed. And I really mean this. I've honestly had people tell me, like I worked in recruiting for a little bit. I've actually had people tell me, well, I haven't really failed. I've actually had a very successful career. And so I get, that's, they're all successful careers still have difficult moments in them.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's all they're asking. What's a difficult moment that you had in your career? Mm-hmm. So they want to know that you're self-aware. And then all they want to know is, what did you do about it? Mm-hmm. And then all they want to know after that is, how did you follow up? Mm-hmm. It's three things. So self-aware, so you can just say, but rather than use the negative language, because remember, when we use words that have a sort of a negative connotation, it actually shuts off rapport. That's why that question's uncomfortable when we hear it, but we don't need to repeat that. What we can say, it says, well, that's a great question. So first of all, golden rule of communication, acknowledge. That's a great question. And it reminds me of a time that I really learned about blah, blah, blah. Let's say details in project management.
Right.
And here's what happened. I was in this situation. Golden rule is never, ever criticize someone or throw someone else under the bus. It's only about what you're fully responsible for. So you say, I'm just giving you a general answer. I was in this situation and we were planning on blah, blah, blah thing. And I realized that, let's say we're getting close to the deadline, and I'm missing something really important. Like, I'm missing this, and I should have noticed this earlier. So I immediately kind of go, oh my goodness, I gotta correct this. Self-aware, they love that. Mm-hmm. Then self-correct. So I went right back to the root of, where could I possibly have missed this? Self-correct, they love that. I went right back to the root, and together we worked it out. Not so-and-so, maybe someone did miss giving me something, maybe they did, but I'm not going to say that in the interview. Right. I'm going to say, I went to the root and we worked it out together. So we came up with a new solution, like plan B, C, or D, whatever. And then we followed up with the customer. So we followed up with the different steps. We all worked this out together. And you know what? It worked out really well. What I learned from that is blah, blah, blah thing. And it allowed me to actually go and make my processes a little bit tighter. Followed up with the customer. They were happy. So it worked out good. Now, sometimes they'll even ask you, what's the time when you failed and it really didn't work out?
Right. Yes, they do. They come.
Yeah, they do ask that.
Yes,
and sometimes they ask you, what's a conflict that you had? Right. Usually we pick a conflict that we were able to work out, but sometimes they'll ask you, what's a conflict that you had that didn't work out? Now, it's true that not all things come to a wonderful conclusion.
Mhm.
So what they're looking for, though, same kind of thing. They're just looking for what was your effort and how did you deal with it and what did you learn from it? That's the purpose of the question. So you pick a time. Now, never ever pick a total disaster. Like, like never pick those. But just pick something that's reasonable to discuss that they can also relate to, right?
Mhm.
So you just pick the time. Let's use conflict. Let's say there's a long-standing conflict. Let's say you go into an organization and let's say two departments have a long-standing, let's say, duality going on, which
Mhm.
sometimes happens.
Yes.
You can say, you know what, I'm in this situation and I'm realizing that when I come into this situation, I'm realizing that there's a lot of history behind why each person, because remember, conflict is only a difference between two people, why each person feels, the way that they do. And so there's quite a bit of background behind it. So it's not here's the steps that I took. Self-aware. First of all, I'm acknowledging each person for where they are. Self-correct. I decided to really kind of try to get to the root of each of both sides, discuss both sides. And I realized, so what's one common point that we can agree on? We are not going to fix the whole pie, but we can fix one or two pieces of the pie. Because some things you can't fix the whole pie all at once.
Mhm.
So we fixed two pieces, and then it was open to the third piece. So the whole thing's not solved, but part of it is.
Mhm.
But what I learned from that is such and such. So then we always end with, what did I learn with it?
Mhm.
Yeah, those are really good questions because they sound really, oh dear, what am I going to say? But really, if you can think again, turn that obstacle into stepping stone. Remember what they really want. It's like interview speak. What they really want is just how did you go through it?
Right.
So your ability to do that gives them heaping amounts of confidence, because a lot of times people will try to avoid the question. Or I've also heard them say, well, I had this manager and there was nothing but trouble.
Mhm.
Don't say anything like that.
Okay.
No.
I was just going to say, would you like to talk about things that you don't do? Words you don't say?
Yes. 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 Even if that was the case,
Mm.
you don't say that.
Mhm.
If you have someone that you're working with that is, because we run into situations that are hugely challenging.
Mhm.
It's really hard to say what was okay about it. There is a golden rule. If you absolutely can't say a single good thing about someone, you actually do need to work with that, because if you go into an interview and someone picks up that energy,
Mhm.
they will most likely not be able to get past it.
Mhm.
So my suggestion is, and this is what I work with my clients with, is we really do work until we have 3 good things we could say about each person.
Mhm.
Only 3. It doesn't have to be 23, just 3.
Just 3.
And you need to be able to say them like you truly believe them.
Mhm.
You say, you know what? I learned a lot from this person. So here's how I would describe working with someone that was very difficult.
Mhm.
I learned a lot from this person. I would have to say prior to this experience, I was not familiar with how to deal with some of these types of communication and some of these types of leadership, because I just had never encountered it before.
Mhm.
And so
Mm.
my learning was, when you try to use old ways to deal with new things, it doesn't work. So,
Especially the old ways that didn't work before, then they're not going to work.
well, they may have worked with someone else, but they didn't work in a new situation, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I would just say, you know what? So here's what I do. I use conflict resolution strategies, and I try to find out there is always one common point. And that's how I worked with this person. But also, I realized that I learned reams of new skills in each area, which will always benefit me, which is very true.
Mhm.
I've learned way more ways of communicating with people, let's say when they're super busy and I can't really have access to them that I would like. I've learned new ways of this, and even list some of the new ways you've learned, because that shows you're in a learning mindset.
Right.
It doesn't mean that that person was wonderful to work with.
Mm.
It means you learned from it. That's the main point.
Mhm.
100% the main point. And it spares you from talking about the other person, because if you talk about the other person, it's likely to show up in the crease in your brow.
Mhm. Mhm. And you know, what happens when you've got that conflict? I mean, it's just 1,000 feet high. You just can't get past it. And I've always, I've had a few of those. And those conflicts have always been the tipping point where like, I've got to get out of here. This is not a good situation. I can't work like this. And they're not budging.
Right. So there is definitely that aspect of it, because in some situations, and I would say this for myself. So for myself being, I will say I am a high achiever, and it is not a fit in all settings.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so if I have to be in a place where, to me, it's like being told to sit in a chair all day on the corner,
Mhm.
then I need to decide myself to be able to move forward.
Mhm.
Like that's like literally restricting me. It's not allowing me to do my work. Sometimes if I'm able to do my work well, but it's kind of not, it's hard because of the person I'm working with, then I try a little harder.
Mhm.
But I think I've learned that because it took me a while to realize that my ability to achieve was not, it was a gift. It wasn't a problem. Whereas in the first parts of my career, when I wasn't really in the best roles,
Mhm.
it was more of a problem. And it was always, you do too much of this, too much of that. It was never, and I was frustrated because I could have done 10 times more. Like, and I'm sitting there going, kind of
Gives you
like,
something to do.
I just can't do nothing
Mhm.
for the day.
There are people that, that they professionally can do that. They can professionally live busy given any situation.
Yes.
I'm not that person. I am,
No,
give
no,
me
but
something, I need to roll my sleeves up. If you're not giving me something to roll my sleeves up, I'm gonna go crazy.
I really like your question because it's a common situation,
Yes.
and it often takes working with someone like outside of that situation to help you sort through it, because there's a certain amount of, is it me?
Mhm.
Is it the job? Is it the organization? Is it the other person? What is it? How do I work through this?
Yeah, those are critical points in your life, and these are, meeting up with those people that are huge obstacles, whether they're at work, whether it's the crossing lady, you're taking your child to school every day, and every time you see the crossing lady, you're just like, stop.
Yes, that's so true.
There are many situations in life where you hit a wall, and sometimes it's in networking where you're hitting a wall, you're trying to network. Perhaps you're meeting somebody and you're trying to get into an organization, you're hitting a wall.
Yes,
Um,
that's true. That's very true. And I think that brings me to, I just want to kind of share something. I'm sharing some thoughts about that words really matter.
mhm.
We referenced this a little bit before, and I just had a couple of points that I wanted to mention.
Right.
Just a couple of points about words. The words that we use actually really make a difference, because some words we use in our language all the time actually trigger that red brain. And if you're working with someone who's difficult to work with in the first place, it helps if you can switch words into solution language. Now, basically, if I could just share a quick point here, this is an important life skill, but this is a huge skill in the job search, because I call it, we're always using in the workplace, we're always using, workplace especially, but actually in life, we're using what I call interview speak, which really is solution language. And this is an interesting thing because interviewers are listening for, how did you, like, what did you improve? It's kind of like, when you're listening for a punchline in a story,
Yes.
they're constantly listening for that. What's the improvement? What's the solution?
Right.
What's the result? What's the, what is it that what is it that you can? What can you do? What can you do? How does this get better?
Mhm.
So when we don't use that language, it's like the other person is constantly waiting for the punchline.
Right. I mean,
And
then
when you're,
hiring managers looking for the benefit that you're going to provide to the organization, to the team, to the, department, whatever it is, that's what they want to hear from you. They want to see that shining. If you don't come across as any benefit at all.
yes. So in our language and in working with difficult people, it's like I mentioned in one of my other slides, we cannot frown and smile at the same time because it's two different chemistries. It's like having two radio stations on at the same time.
Right.
So one of the things we can do is always acknowledge the other person, because, and this is an interesting tool, when you acknowledge the other person, even like, so let's say, I'll use an example of a person that I have worked with, that I've initially found hard to work with, would kind of sort of like almost come at me, kind of say like something that was alarming to me to receive. And it was like, you've done this wrong, like not asking me, what did you do? Whatever, you've done this problem, there's this problem or whatever, like something would come at me like with a problem. So what I learned is to say, oh, can you tell me how that is a problem? Like, what is it you wanted? How did you want this to work out? I don't see. So when I ask, how did you want this to work out? It shows me the gap. A gap is different in the brain than a problem. How did you want this to work out?
Right.
What were you wanting here?
Right.
It tells me right away where they're coming from. So because if I first of all answer their question, I have no idea what they really mean. I'm only interpreting what they mean. But if I ask, how were you wanting that to work out? Now I know what they're talking about. So I acknowledge. And you know what? It changes the tone of the conversation because they're no longer in red brain.
Right.
Because what I just did, I asked, how do you want that to work out? I just made them go into green brain, which is that solution part.
Right.
So then they say, well, I wanted blah, 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 blah thing. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I'll get that for you. Is there anything else that you want? Now, you see how I'm converting it into solutions all the time. And that's different. Just a few things I pointed out here. We talk with people, not to them.
Right.
And when people say, why didn't this learn? Why didn't this happen? You can say, oh, what was it you were looking for? It's interesting sometimes watching people's expression just change when you switch it like that, because it actually changes their chemistry.
Yeah.
So did I answer your question?
Yeah, while you're talking.
We were talking about the wall.
Yes.
So that's actually the solution language is the way the solution language takes down the wall, because you're looking for a common solution. There's no wall in the middle anymore.
I'm reminded of the time I was in an office, one of the last jobs I had in office, and 4 desks in an office, so 4 QBs in an office, and one of the people in the office turns on their heavy metal music, and
Turns out which? Sorry?
turns on the radio.
Oh, yes.
Heavy metal radio.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there, or it was maybe it was an album, I don't know, but she turned it on. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening, I'm like, I'm not a fan of heavy metal music, and it's beginning to irritate me. So I'm trying to figure out what to do here. And I just say, can you please turn that lower? Right. And that wasn't, I'm just adding, she's starting the conflict. She's obviously starting conflict. Why would you think you could turn on heavy metal music in a small office? Why would you think that's an okay thing to do? How about this? Does anybody want to listen to heavy metal music? Everybody would say, no, okay. Then we would have a conversation. Well, let's listen to some music. What do you want to listen to? But that conversation never happened. That ended up in a big fight.
Mm.
because I just asked her to turn it down, and she told me to stop snapping my gum, and it just went on and on from there. And I thought to myself, okay, and I got up and I left. I just got, because I was like, you know what, there's nothing I can say here.
And sometimes isn't that true?
I
Sometimes
know
that's the
that,
truth.
I know that, but for me, I was in heavy fight or flight mode, heavy. And I thought to myself, I'm an overachiever, I'm working here. That's what I'm doing here.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to do anything else.
Mhm.
Obviously we have a problem, and the solution would have been, oh, I don't even know what the solution would have been. She went to the boss. I took a walk outside. She went to the boss.
Right.
And that happens often. That happens many times. It's happened to me many times. I don't go to the boss because
No.
unless it's work related, I don't go to the boss. If I'm doing a job and I'm working on it and it's going and I'm having no problem, and now I'm having a personal issue in the office, what am I doing? Going to the boss to say I'm having a personal issue with this person? Well, they've already done that.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And for me, that's happened so many times I can't even begin to tell you. And it's because I'm an overachiever. Because they're afraid I'm trying to take their job. Because I'm always trying to do something, I'm always busy.
Mhm.
They're watching me going, what is she doing? Oh, look, she's going to talk to the boss. Are they talking about me? Let's get her out of here. I mean, that's always the way it's been, which is why I work better remote on a contract basis, where you hire me to do something on a deadline and I do it. You love me, ask me to do more, and that's a fabulous relationship.
Right. That's so interesting. That's so interesting because that is a common trait of high achieving. But at the same time, it's always, to put it into a perspective, it's like always finding what's the way that we work best.
Mhm.
And also knowing that we're, there's situations where it doesn't work well.
Mhm.
And then in that situation, you have to decide what's the best option for your plan. It's funny, this picture on this slide is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know what I'm saying? It's happening again.
I know. I'm thinking it's happening again. Yes. And this is about the blind spots that show up that we have, from, like honestly, it took me a while to realize. I remember the first time one of my bosses called me in and told me how amazing my work was and how amazing my communication was.
Mhm.
I didn't even know if I should. I honestly, when she called me into the office, I thought I was in trouble. I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble again. So we end up having these kind of little belief things that show up and they make us doubt ourselves.
Mhm.
And those little blind spots, it's good when we can clear them out because it shows us where we are more confident. And to your credit, though, Joy, there's a certain point, while it's very frustrating, it's also a certain point of noticing, how do we work the best? Like I would say, we have to create our own design of how we work the best.
Mhm.
That meaningful work design, that's really important because we all have gifts. And until we're able to really be able to design them, they sometimes do feel like shadows
Mhm. Mhm.
that we don't recognize.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yes, so that's what I was saying. When we get that understanding, those blind spots become, you know what, this is your music, this is your deal.
Mhm.
I can actually work better in the office and I'll go take the cubicle over there or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And so good for you. That's empowerment.
Well, it took a long time, and it took
Yes, well,
a
I would
number of
agree.
times of the same thing happening. And also, I remember having a conversation with one of my directors, and he said, this is when I was in Seattle, Washington. So I'm a New York girl moving to Seattle, Washington, and I'm working in a company. And he called me in and he says, you're doing really well. We're actually, going to promote you. But he says, I just want to let you know one thing. I'm like, yeah. He goes, and he said it, he said it rather abruptly. He goes, people don't like you here.
Oh,
And I'm like, what? He goes, well, you're too ambitious. You're always getting your work done one time. And, you're always looking for another project and you're always asking to do more work. People don't like that here. And I always think about that when I have that problem again. And I'm thinking, it's my energy. I've got all this energy. And it doesn't work well in an underachieving team. In other words, if the team doesn't want to get it done, if they're not gung-ho, if they're not, if they're groaning and just more or less, the gears are moving forward and they're just trying to get their job done, and it's Monday, oh my God, it's Monday, it's not going to work. I have never woken up on Monday to say, oh, it's Monday. I'm like, it's Monday. What am I doing today? I'm excited to get work done. Maybe it's a problem. I don't know. But I enjoy what I do. And I really, it's really, people say, oh, you're a joy to work with. I'm thinking, not all people say that. But obviously when I'm happy.
So that's true. And this is where I think that when we also, a little bit that I see about working with mindset is it creates more, I guess, what would I call it? A little bit more sort of universal understanding. Because let's say, so for example, in the diversification of my particular background, I have been literally forced to learn how to work with people who are in the other end of the type scale.
Okay.
And I'll just say this, my own daughter is exactly the opposite on the end of the type scale. She's my complete 100% opposite, not even 95. She's as far on the scale that way as I am on this way. So you can imagine how that was learning how to communicate. And it's interesting because when I'm with people that are on my style, one of the things that truly happened to me all my life was I was fast to learn. And I would think, oh, well, that's easy. So I would think, isn't it?
Right.
And so then I had to learn, Luann, it is not necessarily easy for everyone. So as we sort of clear out some of the things of our own experience, because then at first I misunderstood a lot of those messages to be sort of a criticism of me. I didn't understand that it was just it's a different perspective. We're just on other ends of this pole, right?
Right.
So I find that when people work with all of these things, you learn, they've learned other styles and they've learned how to work with them. But what they've really learned is sort of the way to turn the other person's key.
Right. They're the glue,
Yes, you learn. So it's the same thing for my daughter. I learned, we don't do it Luann's way. We do it the opposite of Luann's way. And it works great.
Yeah. Obviously, as my mother would say, not my grandmother now, my mother would say, pick your battles, right? So,
yes.
Yes. The point is, the most important thing for me in my career was to be really happy doing what I was doing so that I could do it well and to keep moving forward. That's really important to me. And it was never important to me, unfortunately, about anybody else's feelings during the process. And while that's not right, and I'm not saying it's right, what I am saying is that's me, right?
Right.
It took me a long time to understand I'm never going to be a manager or administrator or director because, I don't care about people's feelings. It's not that I don't care. That's not the point. It doesn't register for me.
Well, I would say
Part of
other
the
people,
equation. And I would need to go in the Wayback Machine to really change the way I think to put
yes,
it there to move forward. But at this stage, I realize, you know, for me to
I,
manage people, it would be the most uncomfortable job as opposed to me managing processes. Can do that.
right.
Can do
And
that. So I'm thinking that's my secret sauce. Why am I trying to change it? Why don't we find somebody who likes to manage people and put them in
right.
that job and have them tell me what to do, who loves to do stuff?
Well, I think you're bang on, Joy. And I'd like to add to that because when you find your secret sauce, what I'm speaking of is when you kind of clear things out, it gives you 100 more ways to use your own secret sauce.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's less things that show up that kind of get in your way and it kind of clears the path. But for sure, your secret sauce is your secret sauce.
It
Definitely to keep it.
takes a while for people to find that. And,
Yes.
you need to move through your career to get there. And I would only hope that most people get that opportunity. Not everybody does, but I would say to look for it. Because
Yes.
it's going to make, it's going to make that Monday pop as opposed to
Yes.
Sunday and you're like, oh my God.
Right.
Another drink, I can't take it. It's going to be Monday tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, and I love that. It's your secret sauce does make your Monday pop.
Right.
It's for sure. It's kind of like this little slide of turning stress into confidence. Like you can really, when you have that Monday pop, when something comes up, the stress is never bigger than the confidence that you have. And that prior to that, the stress was bigger than the confidence that I had.
Right.
I had to figure that out, that this was actually a good thing.
Right. Right.
It wasn't, it wasn't the difficulty that I kept thinking there was something wrong with me. So there's several ideas here. So we can share these, have these available for people to take a look at for a certain period of
Very
time.
good, very good. So, did you have something you want? I was gonna actually talk about, getting resumes together and
Yes.
doing LinkedIn, because these things are pretty important. But before we go there, did you want to say something else?
Yes. I do have some points on resumes. Part of resumes for sure. Like the whole job search has changed. The pandemic, it was changing before that, but with the pandemic, a lot of things in the job search changed. And so really what people are looking for, even more than ever, is just your ability to understand what is unique to you. In other words, a good thing to put even in the top part of your summary is what if people praised you for? What did your previous supervisor praise you for? What did that sound like? Definitely not an objective. Objectives simply say this is what you want for work, but the person who's reading your resume knows that you're looking for work. So they just want to know what you bring to work, not what you want to work.
Right.
And also, the old language, strong communication skills, oral and written, works well independently and in a team, responsible for, all of that is outdated, and it's more about the testimonials. Like, what did someone say you did well? Noted for doing this thing well, recognized for this, promoted for this, those key achievements. And we also don't use that filler language like excellent, extraordinary.
Right.
We don't use any of those words. We also don't use the skills like sometimes a resume falls down because it sounds more like a job description. Remember that job descriptions are written for hundreds of people.
Right.
Your resume is only supposed to speak to the unique things that you bring. So in other words, the reader has to know in less than 15 seconds what's unique about you, like what's your unique blend. And then the reason they need to know that is because they presume that your unique blend helped you to make some kind of improvement in the workplace.
Right.
And improvement is like their punchline.
Right.
That's what they want right at the top. not a whole bunch of other stuff, not 25 skill words. The conclusion that is drawn now is that if you have an achievement, we presume that you know the skills that went into it. So we don't need to list them, right?
Right.
We just list the improvements. Small fonts, Calibri is preferred. No repetitive language. Oh, no pictures. And don't put references on the bottom, because some keyword software actually rejects a document that has a picture or it has someone else's name on it. And yeah, so there's a million versions of them. And I can't speak to which ones do which, because I don't know. I just hear.
Yes, unfortunately, your resume is not getting into somebody's hands. It's going through.
Not at all, not first of all, but that brings forward another point. It's always good to do the research and to find a connection.
Yes, I was just gonna
Always
say.
better. And always customize, because I've done career presentations, and I always ask people, so out of all the applications that you get, what's the percentage that you reject versus you save? And it's close to 90. It's 85 to 90 reject, 10 to 15 save. And 100% of the time, the reason is the same. It's because the resumes that are rejected just are not specific enough. And if they're just simply a copy paste, like some people just literally copy paste the qualifications into their resume, you have to remember that everyone that copy pasted is sending the same resume.
Right.
So, so that's not helping you. So distinct, concise, only the most important, no filler language, no skills, no big, huge spaces of, sometimes people put headers on them. And seriously, they've got to be about 30 font. That's taking up the top 15%. That's where the reader doesn't need to see your name that big, right?
Right.
No pictures. Also, make it look current. I always say, do you look like a dynamo or a dinosaur?
Yeah, it's difficult when you've been in business for 20 years and you're like, oh gosh, where do I cut this off?
Right. But those are some guidelines. Very concise, strong preference for the one page.
Right.
And you can actually do it very effectively, because like an old style resume has those little phrases each one per bullet, which makes long pages. Instead, what you do is you put a reasonable achievement statement together that doesn't have to have all those tasks in it.
Right.
Because if you have an achievement, it includes the tasks, right?
Right, exactly. They know, if you say you increased sales 15% over Q4, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They know all the skills it takes that.
Yes, that's exactly true. And all they care about is that you increase sales X% over Q4. Like, really, that's it.
Right.
So you could have a statement that said, increase sales, increase productivity this much, increase turnaround time this much, increase turnaround this time. In an old resume, that would be 5 bullets. In a new one, that's 1.
Right.
So it's awesome. It's so impacting, which is why those kinds of resumes get noticed. They're distinct, unique, and they speak to the difference.
But the networking, the connection and the networking is very important.
It's still, yes, it's still number one. Being able to use, and I know we're running out of time here. So LinkedIn, to be able to use LinkedIn is a key factor, because 89% of recruiters and organizations are on LinkedIn. So to be able to, use all those features makes a big difference.
Yeah. I wanted to back up a little bit and to talk about networking, because there's one thing that's very important about connections and networking, and the way that you talk about previous positions or people that you've worked with. It's the concept of burning the bridge. When you've got a situation where it didn't work out well, or it's not working out well, and you're talking with new people and you're trying to get a new opportunity, or you're just trying to find out what's out there. Maybe you're not at the point where you're thinking of another job, but you're at the point that you're just trying to see what, how to get out of the situation. That, that negative speak or that burning of the bridge. You may feel, it may feel good at the moment, but it will never, ever,
No,
it will be there permanently.
yeah, it's a bridge burnt is a bridge burnt.
Yeah.
It's, we always talk about only ever build bridges, never burn them. And even with difficult situations. So so I'll just quickly give an example. Let's say, for example, a person might be in an interview or something, or they might be networking with somebody. Maybe they think that, oh, this is going to be fantastic. They go into it all enthusiastic, and then they get there. And I've seen this and felt this myself. I'm thinking, how did the job we're talking about relate to what I thought we were going to be talking about? There seems to be a big difference here. So let's say we're in the situation and we realize for one reason or another, maybe it's just not going to work. So we don't want to go, we don't remember, you can only smile or frown. Make sure it's the smile. And a way of doing that is to be saying, I really appreciate, so always acknowledge first, golden communication rule, always acknowledge first. Thank you so much for your time. And, I really appreciated how much you shared about this role today and what I've learned about it. Because what I've learned is a little bit different than what I was thinking it would be. So I take it on me, not the way it was advertised, which is probably obvious. I say, the way I was thinking about it is kind of different from what I've learned about it today. And I think it may not be the best fit for my career path. However, I really appreciate your organization. I really appreciate the time that you shared with me today and getting to know more about this. If there's something that comes up that is more along the lines of blah, 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 which is my path, I'd love to know about it. And I'm hoping we can keep in touch in case there's something else that comes up either for myself or for you.
Right.
So we've built a bridge out of that situation.
Right.
And the other person is probably feeling the same way. If I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, they're probably thinking, I don't know about this too. So I call it like the elephant in the room. The elephants in the room, be gone. No more. So instead we just say very nicely though, thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me know this, because I have to be honest, I'm thinking what I thought was a little bit different, no matter how big it was, a little bit different. And I think, maybe it's not really the best fit as much as I might have thought it was. But what I do like is I appreciate your company. I appreciate, you spending this time with me. Think of 3 things that you can be grateful for in that moment.
Right.
They will love that. And that's what they'll remember.
That's right.
Now, the most important thing is, if you left the interview, let's say a little bit sort of frowning, that's what they'll remember.
That's what they'll remember.
And then that's also, if somebody comes up, let's say 3 months from now, because as a matter of fact, Joy, as we're speaking, I had a situation like this. I worked with someone this week and they didn't have the greatest situation in their interview. That was way back in April. And this week, that very person came to them and said, you know what? I really loved how you handled this interview. And there's a position in blah, 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 blah. And I'm actually thinking you would be a good fit for it. Because you build the bridge.
Right.
They remember you.
Right.
In a good way.
Right.
So they want to refer you. But if you kind of left it with a frown, if that person comes up and says, I'm really looking for this person, they might be thinking, I kind of know somebody, but I'm not so sure.
Right.
Exactly.
It's important.
So,
it really is important.
Yes. So
no
we
matter how much you just want to say something or burn the bridge or end the interview because it's just, this is not where
and sometimes that's true. But here's the other thing.
Yeah.
Candidates, and I know I'm sorry, I'm running a little bit over here.
Oh, don't worry.
But
as my neighbor turns on their chainsaw, go ahead. Has nothing to do with anyone. No. building next door. They're building a house or something. Go ahead.
Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we were talking about that person who leaves a good impression versus a person who
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
leave a good impression. It's just, there's no end to the value of building those bridges.
Right.
No end.
Right.
It's like everything is a bridge. You just don't recognize it for what it will be down the road.
Exactly.
There's another golden rule. Never ever make someone feel like you are wasting their time. Like acknowledge them.
Right.
Maybe it didn't turn out, but it didn't turn out for them either.
Right.
So just always say, thank you for your time, or thank you for letting me know. Thank you for your generosity of information, because, oh yeah, this is what I was going to say in interviews, because a lot of candidates say, I do these great things. Sometimes interviewers will actually throw some oddball situation in there just to see how you handle it. And they will do that just to see how you handle it. Now, that is actually a good thing to do, because here's why. I've been in interviews where people were like all composed and everything. And I asked one question. This one question just told me really how they handled stress. And the question is, if I ran into a situation that was really stressful, so if I'm the boss, ran into this situation that's really stressful, and I needed you to work overtime for, let's say, a certain period of time, maybe it kind of interfered with a weekend or interfered with an evening, how would you be with that? Well, I'm telling you, that answer tells me everything, because subconscious mind does not hide what your face is speaking. Sometimes people will say, well, that will be fine. Or they outright blast.
Right.
Or they outright say, oh, you know what? If as long as I have some time to make some arrangements, I'll do whatever I can. I'm not expecting them to commit to a whole weekend in a moment's notice.
Right.
I'm only asking. But boy, I tell you, I sure get good answers. So also think, what if a customer was doing the very same thing that the interviewer is doing right now?
Right.
Because you would have to use the same skills with the customer. Use them with the interviewer.
Right.
You will come out winning every time.
I think a little surprised at that point when the person asks that question, maybe you frown for half a second, right? But acknowledge the fact that you did that and just say, something like, wow, you threw me for a second. And now that I think about it, I probably would do X, Y, Z, and it's got to be a positive thing. So, like you said,
but then it's
as long as you gave me enough time to make arrangements, I think it would be fine.
Exactly. So it's just think of the interviewer as a customer. That's one of my last tips here, because I got lost, but we can't stay here. But treat the interviewer like a customer. Imagine if an interviewer asks you a difficult to understand question, because remember, interviewers are probably good at their jobs. Most interviewers are not professionally trained. They're not good at interviewing. And this is not a slam on interviewing. It's a skill of its own. So there's no judgment intended by that. It's just, awareness for candidates that if you treat the interviewer like a customer, because customers will ask you just the same kinds of difficult questions. You probably couldn't yell at them. Like somebody yelled at me when I asked that. They said, I am so tired of being blah, 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 blah. I thought, okay.
The customer yells, but you're not going to yell at the customer. No. The customer's going to say.
The customer says, I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of this product. You say, what can I do for you? But you don't say, I'm so tired of customers telling me that this product is terrible. Or that's not going to work very well.
No, it's not going to work.
And to have the best outcomes. Anyway, so we could talk
we could go forever and ever and ever.
Yes, we could. So
the point is that,
the point,
you have a good business. And people do pay you for this. So
yes,
I'd like to be able to provide something to the audience so that they might, if they have more questions, get in touch with you or, find out more about you. I know that you gave me a few resources ahead of time,
Yes.
books and such, and I'm going to share those links with people. If you're looking at this at YouTube, it's below in the description, so you'll be able to go and find it there. But tell the audience how people can find you, like LinkedIn and such like that.
Yes. So it's I personally have a belief that anything is possible, and I really wanted to help everyone understand that all of these obstacles, it's absolutely possible to turn them into stepping stones. They're all ways that can become working for you instead of getting in your way. So my website is called Mastering Your Savvy. That's SAVVY, double V, so double savvy.
Okay, cool.
And I am on LinkedIn. I'm most active on LinkedIn, and my last name is spelled HOROBIN. So it's pronounced Horbin. I'd love to chat with you. I would welcome any conversation that you have, any questions that you have. I provided a handout of turning that feedback turns failure into success. Failure is only another form of feedback. When you get feedback, there's no failure.
Right.
Like there's no failure.
Right.
There actually isn't failure. That's only one step. It's like, this is the step before the next one. The next one will probably go smoother because of this one. But if you don't have those middle steps, can you imagine if you were trying to do a stairwell and you only hit the bottom step and the top one, like your hips would hurt.
It's the other thing,
Exactly.
You make a cup of coffee and it's not good. It's a horrible cup of coffee. The next day it's better. You're learning. It's not failure. And you'll never make another cup of coffee again. That's not the way we should run our lives.
And
you're hammering a nail, the nail breaks. You get another nail. You don't say, oh, that's it.
There are no more nails. There will be no more hammering and no nails.
Right. You don't do that. I mean, obviously, there
Right.
are some instances where you jump out of an airplane, you're like, I'm never going to do that again. Okay, that's fine.
Awesome.
You're jumping out of airplanes after this, but the point is,
Okay.
Yes.
So I love to help people get their dreams. That's my love in life. So I have a website. I'm on Instagram. I do posts on Instagram. I do posts on Facebook.
How do people
And I
find
do
you on Instagram?
Lots of
Is it a difficult? Well, I'll have
it's just slash Facebook.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is I don't remember the exact connection.
Yes.
But I put it in my contact information.
Yes, I'll share it with everyone. So
right, if you just look for Mastering Your Savvy, you'll find me. So you'll find me on LinkedIn, but I chat away like crazy on LinkedIn. I chat away like crazy on Facebook and on Instagram. I also, if you tell me that you came to this podcast, I will honor 20% off of any of my programs. But I need to know that you came to this podcast for that.
So you have to listen to this to the end.
Yes, well, you just have to know. Yes, that's the bonus.
So
it's the bonus of being attentive.
You tell them you were at the Email and Coffee podcast, and she'll honor 20% off. You said 20%, right?
20%, yeah.
Very nice.
And my website is Mastering Your Savvy. I did put the handouts in, and I also put one on resume tips, which we discussed. And I have tons of things. I do also have a website link that will have the handouts in a bit of time, but there'll be a connection to the handouts. So
I'll be sharing all the links.
All kinds of tips and tools are ready to
Very
go.
good. Excellent. This has been so much fun. We could go on forever and ever and ever. And unfortunately, we do need to end.
Yes, we do need to end.
So thank you very much, Luann. It's been great. And happy email marketing, you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joy. Bye-bye.
Bye.